2.5 years
about 2 years.
2 years,
yeah.
about 2 years in the making to get it all done.
And it is inclusive through town meeting last October and regulation changes of the CPC through December of last year. So it really is inclusive through December of 2000, and it has the approval of the Attorney General for everything in there as of March 29th.
The other important point is that over the last 2 years, there also was a tremendous amount of research going back to ensure that everything followed suit with what the actions of previous town meetings going way, way, way back.
That's right. Yeah, because it documents the history of when all the sections were accepted at town meeting and approved by the Attorney General, and it was a great deal of back and forth communication with the editorial staff, and you know, I have great confidence in the book, and I think they did a great job, and they were very easy to work with. So I'm very pleased with it. It's very good for the town, I think.
Yep. Again, it was one of the priorities of the board a couple of years ago to get it done and move forward. And as you said, the board supported the action, and it came to fruition. It's nice to see some things come to fruition. Thank you for that. Now, why don't you explain to us about the re-precincting and why we have this matter before us tonight?
Right, and you've all received a copy of my memo, I think, and the precinct map that is proposed for the changes. These changes do come about almost every 10 years as the federal census figures come into the towns. And the guidelines for re-precincting are outlined in your memo and are set. They must, all the precincts must be within 5% of the median average. They must contain no more than 4,000 residents within each precinct. They must be compact and contiguous, and precinct boundaries must coincide with federal census block boundaries. So what we do on the local level is scrutinized through the state, through the to make sure that we comply with all of these regulations. And the plan that we have this year, the last time, let me give you a little summary. The last time we did this was in 1994 based on the 1990 census. And since then, at the November state election, ballot question 1 was a provision to expedite this matter into a plan to have the boundaries changed by the 2002 state election cycle, which is a 2-year accelerated plan from what is on the books on the state law. The Secretary of State's office has filed legislation to make the Massachusetts state law comply with that, and we are ordered to comply with that on the local level. So this plan, once approved, will be in effect for the 2002 election cycle, the state election cycle. It would go into effect on December of this year, at the end of December. Now, the plan that is presented, and you have in front of you what highlights the one area of change. And I think that North Reading on a whole is very lucky with this, because we have one area that by shifting the residents of this one area from precinct 1, which is our biggest precinct, to precinct 4, we would even out our population distribution and still comply with all of the precinct boundary guidelines. So this plan before you includes that. It's a shifting of 441 residents, and the figures that you have there on a chart that I gave you as well would show you that the population of each precinct then do fall within the target area. The median target population would be 3,459, and on the plus or minus side, it's outlined there, and all of these precincts do fall within that. Our area of growth during the past decade has been in precinct 1, so we knew that we would have to shift people from precinct 1 to precinct 4, and I think where we are more fortunate than some communities is that this did not have a domino effect for the town, because often when you change one precinct line, you have to carry that through to the other precinct lines to make the population even out. So it is one area, and then this map on the side does show you the whole outline of precinct 4 in the dark yellow. What you have before you, the dark yellow area is currently in precinct 1, and that would shift to the lighter yellow area of precinct 4. This is not by choice of the town, it's a mandated action. and we have to comply with these regulations to make this shift. And as I said, it usually does occur every 10 years that the town must do this. So I don't know if anybody has any questions on the proposed shift.
Just as far as notification to the residents who are affected, how are we going to notify them other than we have a meeting tonight?
Right.
And then is there going to be some sort of a follow-up just prior to whatever the next election is going to be, to inform them that, you know, you were precinct 1 that voted here, now you're going to be precinct 4?
Right.
Or?
What we would do, we are required by law to send them notification by first-class mail, first of all, so that would take place. In the next census mailing, there would be a notification too that I would put in, because that's a bulk mailing, so that would not constitute coverage for a first-class mailing. But there would be another notification there for, especially, the form itself tells people what precinct they're in, but we would have an insert also put in, at least to the people whose precinct has changed, if not to the entire town. I'm not sure how we'll approach it, but at least to those affected.
And that's for what? A census?
For the census. And so that would be before our town election, which would be the first in the election cycle next year in May. And the census goes out in late December or early January.
Okay.
So and that would give them
what's our water bill cycle mailings? Do you know?
They're quarterly, but I don't know when. We just got ours.
Just got it, so it's May, and then we'll go July, August, September. I'm just wondering if we could do it again, if it's going to be like a February mailing or something, just to remind those residents. Again, that's something we're already mailing out. Throw an insert for those people that are being affected. I think the more we educate them, the less painful it's going to be, and the less heartache and heartburn there's going to be on election day when people show up where they always showed up and say, I'm sorry, you have to go down to the church now.
Right. This would be a minimal amount of people. Luckily, of course, it does affect some people. Mr. Murphy gets elected to office and he's already re-precincted out of his hometown. But
I'm pretty happy. That means we're the president of precinct 1.
We're not going all the way down Phyllis Drive. But as I said, you know, the last time we did this, it affected quite a few more residents of the town. We have to do it. We have to comply. The only options we have are trying to decide, you know, where to redraw these precinct lines. And this is with the assistance of the Secretary of State's office and their wonderful computer program system, which is available to us now, which when I meet with them, or I have met with them, we try to target different areas, find out the populations, what happens when we shift them, and what has the least impact and will still meet the criteria set forth for these precinct lines. So
there we have it. Mr. Murphy.
Just a question, Barbara, if I may. You mentioned precinct 1 is our largest precinct.
Yes.
And, more.
Well, no, precinct 4 will be with this change, believe it or not.
Does this factor in the future growth in precinct 1?
You know, we have to, this is based on the Census 2000 figures at this moment, what was reported from the federal census to the state in early spring. And that's what we go on. It does give us some leeway, but it may not be enough to carry us through the next decade, the next mailing at 2010. And that's why we do re-precinct every 10 years, or we are made aware of our population shifts. This does give us, as I said, some leeway, because that is the area that will continue to grow. Exactly. So it will not solve, you know, the problems for the future. It may, depending on the growth, but it meets the criteria and a little bit more for now. So it does give us some breathing room, I think, for
That's
growth.
what I'm noticing in the new numbers.
Yes.
It gave maybe a little extra.
Yeah, it does. It's amazing. Precinct 1 has been the largest precinct for such a long time that when I saw the figures of the shift, it was kind of like, wow, you know.
Well, you're moving me to the largest precinct.
Yes, I am. So you're okay. Your constituency will grow. So that is the shift. If you factored in those figures, you know, precinct 1 would be almost 4,000 residents, which is the max. You know, you cannot exceed 4,000 residents. If at some future date the town should grow to over 16,000 residents, we would have to have a new precinct in the town. I'm not sure that North Reading will ever reach that mark. So maybe we will be staying at 4 precincts if we reach build out and be able to maintain this.
One question, why are the precincts numbered the way they are? Why don't they go 1, 2, 3, 4? Why do they go 1, 4, 2?
That's logic, Dave.
Yeah, that makes too much sense.
Well, At one point, actually, Dana, precinct 2 extended all the way across here to precinct 1, okay?
Okay.
It did.
Okay.
The numbering, I can't speak to that, exactly why, but I can tell you that precinct 2 did abut at one point. The configuration was different, and so I imagine that it was back when the town was first divided into precincts that the numbering was established, and that they did at one point touch.
At our meeting today, too, I'll tell the board that this does absolutely nothing for the town of North Reading except cost us money.
What's that?
There's no advantage to the town. As a town, there's absolutely no advantage. They use it in, federal census and distributions of monies and so on, but basically it does nothing for us.
Oh, other than equally divide the
Right.
precincts.
It
Which
just
does
complies
nothing.
with the law, but it does, the state then uses it to redraw legislative lines and congressional lines for their purposes.
Yeah, some communities are split between
Right.
representative and
Precinct
senatorial
Reading is,
districts.
It's another
Wilmington is.
ridiculous move, but
Well,
that's
yeah.
why I
But
say it
that's
does nothing.
because
It's all
there are
numbers
caps
driven.
on the number of constituents each representative can have and each congressman can have, and so on. So that's when they do cut into a town and take one precinct and move it to
To
one
another town,
representative
yeah.
or another. We've been lucky to escape that so
Yeah,
far,
we have.
so.
Actually, all the surrounding towns have been split. Middleton's been split,
That's
North
right.
Andover's been split, Andover's been split, Wilmington's been split, Reading's been split. So
Right.
we're actually
And we
the ones-
are whole
We get
at the
gerrymandered, don't
moment.
get me wrong. We get tossed around from districts, but
Right,
at least we
but
stay and remain intact
As a whole,
so
right.
far. So,
Right.
okay, but you're right, Dan, it doesn't do us any good other than dividing us up equally and bring us into compliance with the law.
That's it. In a town that has representative town meeting, this would have probably a greater impact on them, because then you would be changing, somebody who was elected from a certain district. But for North Reading's purposes, it just allows us to comply with the law, and that's something we do have to do. So this plan is before you for your approval.
Do you just want to mention the affected streets, just for anybody who's watching, so they don't have to wait for the paper?
Okay. It actually would have Orchard Drive as the dividing line going from the corner of Washington Street and Elm Street, from Orchard Drive to Susan Drive. The west side of Orchard Drive, I don't know what the numbers are, I think they're the even numbers, would be moved into precinct 4, and the odd numbers on the east side would remain in precinct 1. Precinct boundary divisions do have to run up the middle of the streets. That's one of the regulations set forth. And all of our precinct boundaries, Haverhill Street, Central Street, Park Street, they're all divided in the middle. So this is not something new. Unfortunately, it will be new for these residents. And then it continues from a point at Susan Drive, just going slightly west, and then continuing up Lindor Road till it meets Darrell Drive. And then and again, we're talking about the middle of each of these streets. So the portion of the street on the westerly side would now be in precinct 4, and those remaining on the easterly side would remain in precinct 1. From Darrell Drive, it would go westerly to Arlene Drive, and then southerly down Arlene Drive to Foley Drive, and westerly out to meet Haverhill Street once again. For if anyone can see this picture, perhaps that would outline the dark yellow area is the changed area, and it is by standards, a small area, not to minimize the effect on 441 residents, but it's a change that at some point has to be made in some fashion. So I'm not sure if that can help. The probably as best as you can.
Again, then
see it.
just travel subtly on Haverhill Street to Elm,
Yes, right, continuing down there,
just Elm
correct.
Street, right?
And then following along Elm Street to Washington Street again, and Orchard Drive. So that whole area then becomes precinct 4. So that means that the polling location for those residents would change. The locations themselves are not changing, but those residents would change to vote from the high school to St. Teresa's Church. And that would be in next year's election cycle.
Okay. We'll accept a motion to accept, as presented by the town clerk, the 2001 precinct plan for the town of North Reading.
Mr. Chairman, I move to accept this presented by the town clerk for 2001